Yo guys, welcome back to the final whistle. But before we get into the video, make sure you like the video, make sure you subscribe, turn on the notification bell, and comment down below. What do you guys make of this Crystal Palace resurgence of Oliver Glazner's overturning form? And also, what does this mean for mid-table clubs? Let us know in the comments below as we go along in this video. But guys, I want to talk about Crystal Palace, yeah? Because not only did they put up a lovely performance against Man United, like, mate, PB, I know you watched that game, yeah?
I did.
Did you watch it with a smile on your face? Because I know I did. Did you?
I was surprised, man.
Surprised?
Fuck off, you, man. Real talk. I watched it with a smile on my face.
Did you?
Yeah, of
What
course I
type
did.
of smile?
I was like, this is always gonna happen. Maybe not 4-0, but like they were always gonna beat us.
You sure?
I promise you.
Okay.
Yeah, they're always
It's
gonna
on
be
live
us.
stream. Go
no,
watch
that-
it.
no,
I was
I
smiling. I was smiling.
Yeah, no, so I just want to dig a bit deeper into Crystal Palace and sort of, you know, their season this year, because let's not get it wrong, Palace haven't been performing like this all season. You know, they had Roy Hodgson at the start of the year, who obviously left. Roy Hodgson, credit to him, he's been a great manager.
Senior man.
Senior man for real.
Let's rest.
But yeah, it's time to rest. It's time to
Yeah,
rest. He needs to
man.
put his feet up, get some Supermall, and just watch what Oliver Glasner is doing with his team. Because since Oliver Glasner's come in, Mateta, Jean-Philippe R9 Mateta.
Yeah.
Oh no.
The guy's been on no. The guy's been on smokes. PB, how many goals has he got?
He's got, is it 14
13 goals.
13 goals, 4
assists.
assists.
Yeah.
17 goals and assists from Mateta, which I never expected. I always thought Odsonne Edouard was going to pip him to that number 9 position. So,
Exactly.
you know, I'm very surprised to see, you know, him doing this. But the question is, you know, does he do it next season? Do they stick with him next season? Do they go and get someone like Nketiah who might be in the market? You know,
And you know what? That's exactly what I was going to lead on to. I was going to say, where did this Palace team going from them? Because I feel like under Glazner, and I don't want to just say under Glazner because they have made some smart transfers as well. Prior
altogether.
to,
Under
altogether.
Vieira, yeah.
But I feel like, you know, again, this season they brought in summer, they brought in Matheus França for 20 mil from Flamengo. And there was a lot of eyebrows raised because, yes, it is a big fee for Crystal Palace. And again, he wasn't actually playing. Like, I don't know why Roy Hodgson splashed out that much money on him and then didn't play him. I know he got injured, but again, he wasn't necessarily playing.
Yeah.
Now, in January, Adam Wharton, who I've been a fan of for the last year, anyone who's been watching Blackburn last year, or even just Championship football last year, knows this guy's been ready for a step up to the Prem. I'm surprised that he went to Palace, to be fair.
Yeah, because as always, Chelsea was in for him. You know, they're
Yeah,
in for any
I
youngster.
thought he'd end up somewhere like Brighton or Brentford because that sort of profile of player is perfect for not only their team right now, but in his development. And we've all seen what Adam Wharton can do. You know, him and Will Hughes. Will Hughes, who was a touted star boy back in like 2012, I think it was, is now actually playing like a Premier League standard midfielder.
Yeah, which is another player that shocks me because, you know, he made the move from Watford and we knew he was Premier League level and obviously he shouldn't be playing in the Championship. But, you know, he looks like a different player under, you know, Glazner, which I'm actually quite surprised about. He might not have, you know, the legs that, in my opinion, to last the full 38 game season next season.
Yeah.
But, you know, as a squad player, I think he's definitely good, and the manager's getting the best out of that midfield period.
Yeah,
at the
I
moment.
think it's a smart signing, and it's good that they played together because Wharton, I think, is quite similar to Will Hughes in the way they play. And you mentioned Will Hughes being a star boy, but you know Wharton can go on to be a better player with similar abilities than Will Hughes. So I think what Crystal Palace are doing there is setting up for the future.
Yeah.
I think they know that realistically they're going to struggle to hold on to some of their key players, especially in that front line. But I think someone like Adam Wharton is someone who doesn't need to rush to move on to another club yet. He can stay, you know, make himself a better Premier League proven player over the next 2-3 years.
Yeah.
And you know, whilst they keep building, whether it's with or without Olise and Eze and Mateta.
And listen, those are two players that have been in inspiring form. Obviously, we know that Eze and Olise have had their fair share of injuries. I think Olise's only played 16 games this
In the
season,
Prem,
or
yeah,
7?
16,
and,
yeah.
he's got 10 goals.
I just want to read this one stat out real quick because, again, I feel like
18 games, yeah.
I think for Olise, obviously he represents France, and it's one of these players where, you know, you always sort of get these bundles of talent within the lower half of the in the table. You know, think about like when we had that great Southampton team. There was Mane, there was Lallana, there was even, you know, Puncheon. There's a lot of other players that dotted around in these types of teams, but I feel like Olise can take it to the next level. Now, in terms of most non-penalty goals and assists per 90 in the wingers, not in the league, in the world, he's second
To who?
to Kylian Mbappe.
That's
Do
crazy.
you know who's third and fourth? Rafinha and Vinny Jr.
That's
Now, that's
crazy.
the that's the company that he's keeping. That's how good, and like I mentioned before, in a season that's been riddled with injury, he's still putting up those types of numbers.
Yeah.
I personally think like, they're gonna struggle to keep a hold of Olise.
Olise.
Eze, I think will probably stay for another year, but I wouldn't be surprised if he left as well because he's
The
on
main
another
thing for
level
me,
as
and
well.
obviously I know the discussion is about Palace and mid-table clubs, but if we touch on Elise for a brief second, it's where does he go? Because, you guys are United supporters here. If I'm being fully honest, I wouldn't go there. I feel like I wouldn't go there. And not at this moment.
Oh, as in Elise wouldn't go
Yeah,
there.
if I was
thought you
Elise,
said
I
Man
would-
United wouldn't go there. Okay,
United should be in for him.
Yeah.
But, if I'm Elise, I wouldn't go there because United still have to do this rebuild. They still have to.
And why can't he be part of that rebuild?
Because hold on, we've got Ahmad in that position. Young, injury prone. Kind of like Elise, young and injury prone. Obviously not comparable to the numbers at all.
Yeah.
You've got Anthony still in that position. The decision of whether or not they stick with the manager and whether or not the manager sticks with playing that player profile of Anthony. You've got Garnacho, who's a competitor on the wings, whether or not if Rashford holds down that left wing position and stays at United. So there's so many moving parts.
Do you not think Olise goes there and becomes a starting right winger?
There's so many moving parts, you don't want to take a punt and go because look at if I compare it to Chelsea, Palmer, out of the million players that we signed, he worked. God forbid Elise goes to Chelsea and he goes under the radar or he gets injury and he doesn't get time to find his form. So that's why, I'm not sure if he makes that move yet, but there might be other clubs in for him.
You know what? I could see him more so going to like Liverpool or I would have said Arsenal, but I don't think he would. I don't think he'd appreciate playing second fiddle.
Yeah,
to
he's
Saka.
not playing second fiddle
And I
to
feel
Saka.
like-
And bro, like when I talk to like all these like like ex academy ballers and stuff, they rate Elise above Saka, bro.
Yeah, but I'm not gonna lie to you. That's clear because his technical ability, technically, Olise is crazy. We all know that.
Say the sentence. Technically, Elise is better than
What, better than who?
Bukayo Saka.
Potentially.
Backtracks, man.
Taking it, man.
But I feel like, I understand. I wouldn't go to United if I was Olise either. I think my best bet would probably be staying at Crystal Palace and seeing if I can get fit, if I can stay fit for a whole season
That's the
and
main
see
thing.
where that lands me.
You want to see him fit for a full Premier League
it-
I
season.
don't know if I agree with that because I feel as though football is about taking the opportunities. I mean, Bellingham moved to Dortmund at the age of 20 or 19, and people would have been thinking, why is he rushing it? He's still young. Why is he going to the biggest club in the world right now? And he was able to force his way into that midfield, and that midfield ain't easy midfield to get into, and it's the biggest club in the world.
Do you know?
So it can happen.
No, it definitely can. But I think what it is that we haven't seen even 30 games of Elise straight and performing at levels that we know he can. Obviously, we know on the Vieira he was a mainstay in that team when he was available. But in the system that he was playing in for Vieira, we weren't really seeing the best of Elise. Obviously, I know it is kind of reactionary to say that over this past 6 months or so that Glazner's been in charge, this sort of Red Bull football that he's brought to Palace has worked for Olise and Eze 100%. But I feel like for him, obviously, I don't know, man, innit? But for him, I would say stay at Palace, try and actually get a whole season fit and play the way that you know how to play. Because let's be real, he's enjoying his football now and he's scoring and the guy's
But we're looking at it from like a bird's eye view. We're not Elise. Like if we're footballers, we're always gonna want to play for the top clubs in the Premier League or the league that we're in.
100%.
So if I'm Elise, I'm going. Do you know what I mean?
I hear it, but he didn't go to Chelsea though.
No, yeah, but I think he's had that season where he's shown the Premier League how good he can be.
Yeah.
But you're right in terms of it'll be good to see him fully fit for a whole season and see what numbers he can actually put up, and then clubs will go in for him. But I think it's up to those top clubs to take a punt on this young player, and then before these other clubs come in and try and create one bidding war. Regardless, if someone goes in for him this season, it's going to be a bidding war regardless because Elise is just that good.
And there's a release
But then
clause
if
as well.
if he's so good next season, it's going to be astronomical numbers. Do you know what I mean? Go
Do you
on.
know what it is? I hear it. I really do hear it. And I think now isn't the time to sell Elise. I think if anyone was to go, it should be Eberechi Eze. More so because he's a bit older and he has, I don't want to say a bit more credit in the bank in terms of what we know he can do, but Eze is one of those players who has had he's had a tough time getting into professional football, if we're honest with each other.
Yeah.
QPR luckily gave him a chance and he's, replayed their faith in him. And then now he's at Palace, we're starting to see him shine. Obviously, he's had his fair share of injuries as well, but I feel like for him, there'd be more of impetus on him to leave than Olise, because Olise is still, I think, 21, and Eze is 22, yeah, and I think Eze is about 26 or so. So he's reaching those ages where it's like, you know what, now is sort of the defining moments in your career. You're going to start to enter your prime, and I feel like a team like, as much as I don't want to say this, but a team like Tottenham can benefit from someone like Eze.
I think it's
who
harder
can
for someone to Eze though to move because of the position he plays. Like a lot of these top 6 clubs or top clubs have their 10s. Do you know what I mean? And I don't think, as you said, as a 26, I don't think he wants to be second fiddle. So I think for him, it might be better for him to be that guy like Zaha was at Crystal Palace and be that guy for Crystal Palace. Whereas Olise, if he goes to a top 6,
Look at how that turned out for Zaha.
He's still a legend for Crystal
And
Palace.
he could have gone to a team like Arsenal or to other teams and actually won something.
That one was kind of out of his hands because they put that death row money on his head.
Yeah, but what I'm saying is that you
And
can
he
be
took
the
it,
star. What I'm saying is that
I'm saying, as in Palace said, 100 mil in a time when no one's going for 100 mil.
of course. They said what 70.
what I'm
70
saying
years
is,
old, they turned down those offers as well.
what I'm saying is that Eze staying at Crystal Palace, it may make him a Crystal Palace legend per se. But in terms of for his personal career, that's not really enough. He's going to want to achieve much more. So I feel as though Palace are going to struggle to keep at least one of them.
No, 100%.
At their club this season. And I think they're well within their rights to go. And I think all the clubs around the world, this is the season in which they should go in for them. As Marcus said, next season their price will be higher. But what I would be concerned about, and what I'm sure Palace fans are concerned about, is where do they go from here?
I think Palace are now Premier League steady eddies.
Yeah.
You know, before obviously they did teeter in and out of Championship, but now I think they are Premier League steady eddies. And personally, I'd love for them to go on to be one of those clubs that, you know, again, end up in another FA Cup final like Alan Pardew led them to, I think in 2012, I think it was, when Lingard scored the winner.
No, it was about
2016
or something like that. Yeah, it was around then.
So I would love for them to progress onto that. And I'm not going to lie to you, if they can hold on to Oliver Glazner, because there has been some interest from Bayern Munich for Oliver Glazner. If they can hold on to Glazner for
100 mil.
I hear it though, because so Bayern Munich
Give
offered, I
me
think, about
my
18
money.
100 mil.
So Bayern Munich.
So you're going, pay me.
Bayern Munich offered Crystal Palace 18 million euros for Oliver Glasner's services, and Palace said no, we want 100 mil. And I completely hear it, because from where they were before, looking like they might end up in a relegation battle, to now being comfortably in the Premier League and playing very good football, I hear it.
Yeah.
I think when you look at it again, I've got the stats here. They've for the past 5 seasons, they finished 14th, 14th, 12th, 11th, and 12th. Yeah, so 100% they're steady eddies. But I think if they release their best players like Eze or Olise,
Just all over again.
over again, which is why they have to, if they're gonna sell, do exactly what like Newcastle did, or like Leicester do. If they let go of these great players, you need to build a great squad behind it to keep you there and then push you on for further.
And I think that's exactly what they've done, because like we already mentioned Adam Wharton, but then Munoz from Genk for 8 mil. That was a shrewd piece of business, because I've already been a fan of him from when he was at Genk, but what he's offered to this Crystal Palace team, a lot of people have just said, oh yeah, he's going to be one of those fullbacks that are flying up the wings, attacking.
Yeah.
But if you look at his defensive stats, like, he is actually I have a quick piece from his game against Wolves where they won 3-1. 3 tackles, 3 clearances, 3 out of 4 aerial duels won, 5 out of 7 ground duels won, and he was not dribbled past at all in the full 90.
Yeah.
Now, again, I understand people will say, it's Wolves. You know, they've been a bit up and down this season. Palace doesn't on an upturn of form, but signings like this for relatively low costs, and again, another signing I'd say that they made in summer was Jefferson Lerma on loan. That was again a great piece of business. I feel like the strategy that Palace are going down is sort of similar to, I want to say it's quite similar to Aston Villa in the sense where when they cashed in on Jack Grealish, they made a bunch of different signings, and it was like some of them are a bit, low price. They had bought Morgan Sanson, they bought Luca Dean. Then there are some high profile signings, like Leon Bailey, Pau Torres, and whatnot. That obviously came in subsequent years. I think if Palace are able to, potentially sell only one of that, the stars in terms of Eze and Olise and potentially even Mateta, if they sell Eze, they need to reinvest that money not only in his position but in other places as well. Because you've got players that have, sort of had a resurgence in form, like Nathaniel Klein.
Yeah.
who for some reason last year was looking washed. This season, he's been in inspired form. And again, another player we haven't even mentioned, Mark Gahey, he might be on the leave as well.
Yeah.
And for a very big fee. So if they lose someone like him, of course they have Wacky Anderson, they have Chris Richards and whatnot, but it's sort of where do they reinvest this money?
But in
and
that
how?
sense, if they sell Eze, that would be the best thing for them, and not sell Olise. Then let Olise have this great season that we think he's gonna have next season. Cash in then, get crazy money because you've already invested with the Eze money. Then if you can cash in again very well with the Olise money next season, then we're talking getting into the Conference League, getting into Europa League spaces because then you would have built very, very well.
I understand what you're saying, but then that begs the question: what type of club do Palace want to become? Do they want to become the club that gets these young players, builds them up, and then sells them for high money? If you do want to become that club, then unfortunately, at times you have to admit that you're just going to be a mid-table club. You're just going to be a surviving Premier League club, and that is something to respect, but you want to push on further. So I like the comparison that you actually made to Aston Villa, where I think the season before Unai Emery they finished 14th. Similar to how Palace will most likely finish this season. Then when Unai Emery came in, finished 7th. And now with Emery, they're probably going to finish 4th, you know. So that progress is unbelievable. I'm not saying Glazner can do exactly the same, but if he moves anything remotely in that trajectory, if Palace if they make a little late European run, Conference League now that teams are able to get into that, that's going to mean a lot for Crystal Palace.
But that's what I'm saying. That's the path that you take then. Maybe Eze and Elise needs to be the first two that they do it with. And if they don't want to become a feeder club, they have to do that business and they need to do it very, very well. So I tell Chris, be very, very careful what you do with these players.
But to be fair, they could even do something where they don't necessarily need to sell their star players and could do something. Obviously, I'm happy because I mentioned this earlier on in the season when we were talking about Ten Hag. And I would say, I think it was a Hot Takes episode. And I was saying there are so many managers that are better than Ten Hag this year. And I mentioned Iraola for Bournemouth. Have you seen what he's been doing at Bournemouth this season? I feel like, no, I'm just saying, it's a reference point. You guys can go watch that video in the description. Anyway, it's a reference point. Crystal Palace, if they're able to hold on to those two, do some smart, cheap business, go again to the Belgian League, because again, there is a lot of talent there, and there is potentially other talent that Glazner might know from his days at Salzburg that he can potentially bring and add to his team. If he can have resurgence in the same way that Bournemouth have, I know that Bournemouth have kind of been bankrolled with their new investors and whatnot, but if they're able to do some smart, shrewd pieces of business, I feel like we're going to be looking at one of the best Palace teams you've seen in the Premier League.
Yeah, but you're right. It's the business that's important because you can keep all these players, but you're going to have to convince them that, we actually mean business, we want to get better. And what concerns me about Crystal Palace is when Eze and Olise doesn't play.
Yeah.
What happens then? Because then we see a Crystal Palace that's nowhere near as good.
Yeah.
And that's what happened this season as well. When Olise and Eze wasn't playing, those players that you're relying on were nowhere to be found.
Yeah, because you mentioned that kid, what's his name, Manka?
Mateus França, yeah.
Yeah, França. He looks all right. He looks promising. I saw him against Chelsea. He actually looked a bit, active, and he managed to get his start because they were injured there. But he's not ready, And a lot of the players who are on the bench, and respect to Crystal Palace for that, they're young youth players who, which I respect. But like Raf said, when those two aren't playing, how does Palace look and what's it going to be? So the question is the business that they're going to do. And then also you spoke about other mid-table clubs, Why won't Brighton push on? Why won't Bournemouth push on, like you said? Well, Brentford, if when they get money from Tony, how are they going to push on? So it's not going to be super easy for them to push to the European spots.
But do you know what it is? I feel like the reason why I have a lot of faith in Crystal Palace to push on is because this is Ivan Toney off the base of this season, not last season. Off the back of last season, we were looking at figures of around 100 mil, 90 mil for Toney. Especially because if it is to another no,
some clubs were touting.
If it was
100 mil,
if it was to another English club, it was definitely going to be upwards of that 80 mil because of that homegrown tax as well. Now
he done the mad thing.
Exactly. Now his price has gone down a bit. Brentford are now looking like they might get about 40 million, maybe 50 if they're lucky. So I think it's again, Thomas Frank can do it. We've seen them do good business with Brentford. We've seen them play really good football as well. Roberto De Zerbi and Brighton. There's enough said there. However, I think in the same way that Jesse Marsh was able to have a really good season with Leeds in the first year, bringing that Red Bull philosophy to Leeds, I feel like this philosophy suits players like Eze, Olise, and obviously we've seen Mateta thrive as well. And I think Palace always have ballers in terms of people that are technically gifted and players that are sort of like standouts. When you look over the years, you've had players like Aaron Ramsaka when he first came out. I'm not saying he's a baller, but he was a standout player. He was a star of that team.
Yeah, Punchin.
Exactly, Jason Punchin. We've had Wilfred Zaha. Even I don't know. Even
Jordan Ayew?
That's exactly what I was exactly to say. I didn't want to say Jordan Ayew, but for a season or two, he did look very, very good, and he was like that sort of star of the team where
Even early on in this season, he didn't look too bad.
Nah,
At the end of the day,
I'm
the guys
Ghanaian,
No,
but
no,
bro, he's dead, man.
But this is what I mean. I feel like they've always had players around that are stars and sort of you can build around. Now, I feel like they're in a position where they have potentially 4, maybe even 5 players that they can build around. And they're looking like they have a coach that is a quality coach that can take them forward. So I've got high hopes for Palace. That's all I'm saying.
Okay, in comparison to the other mid-table clubs.
Yeah, and I think, to be fair, just to sort of round this off, I think mid-table clubs, so again, I'm going between clubs that are like between 7th to 14th or maybe 15th. I feel like the model they should look at is definitely like an Aston Villa model and a Bournemouth model. Because Bournemouth, I feel like once they've got the coach, they've got the players already, and then they just needed time for the coach to sort of cook with them and whatnot. I feel like Palace need to look at that and be like, okay, cool, what do we have here? And how can we navigate around making sure that we're not part of the teams that are in the bottom 5 or even the bottom 10? Because I personally think they can push on to, being that sort of mainstay in the first half of the team of the table, and then potentially getting that, that 9th or having that weird freak Burnley season where they finish 7th or whatever and push on.
Yeah, I mean, it's ambitious, but cool. So I guess if we wrap up by giving a prediction of where we think they'll finish next season, realistically, if they lose those players, which they probably at least lose one of them, depending on how they replace them, I think at best 9th. At best. And that's lucky.
I think they're gonna drop this season. I think if they let go, especially if they let go of Elise, they're gonna drop, regardless of how. I don't really have too much faith in their business. So I think they'll not drop dramatically, but I think they'll drop to maybe 16th because they've been like 14th, whatever. So I say 16th.
Okay.
I think 14th. Yeah, I think they're gonna really struggle to keep hold of Elise, let alone any other player. And yeah, I think they're gonna drop a little bit. I think they'll probably finish the season around the 12th mark. So I say 14th.
You guys, let us know, where do you think Crystal Palace is going to finish next season? Do you think they can hold on to Eze and Olise? Also, if you're a fan of any other teams that we might have mentioned, be that Bournemouth, Aston Villa, Brighton, Brentford, Wolves, wherever, let us know. Where do you think your team is going to finish next season, and what do you guys need to do this summer to make sure you have a better season than this one? Follow us on all of our social media platforms. That's TikTok, Twitter, and Instagram. Subscribe to the channel. And Raph, what do you always say?
Tell a friend to tell a friend.
Peace.